Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. Hi and welcome to my channel. I'm Armin and today we're going to talk about this guy, the brand new SHOEI RF 1400. At least at the recording of this video it was brand new. I don't know when you're watching this right now, so things might have changed, but this just came out. For comparison, we have the SHOEI RF 1100 and 1200. They have different names in different places around the world. I will clear up that confusion a little bit later in this video. If you just have stumbled across my channel, please consider subscribing. I do a lot of in-depth reviews here, track riding, adventure riding, all sorts of fun stuff around motorcycles. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, tons of details, fair warning, this is a long video and that is on purpose. I want to give you as much information, show you how it fits, how it looks like from the inside, what's changed, especially between these two guys. Talk about the heritage and how SHOEI evolved their helmets over time, and really give you the best possible impression from everything I know about this helmet so far. So that especially when you are in a remote place where you cannot just try this helmet on, you get a really solid idea from an unbiased person. Well, I'm a little bit biased, I like these helmets, but I don't get any money if you buy it anywhere in your country, wherever around the world you're watching this video right now. Speaking of that, leave a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I would be very curious to see where people are from around the world. As this is a very long video, if you're watching this on your desktop, in the timeline bar you will see different sections and you can jump from section to section in case you don't want to see the entire video and you're just interested about a certain topic. Also in the description below you will see the little timestamps, and also on your mobile you can use that to jump to each section to save you some time. Another disclaimer, right? I only have this helmet now for almost 2 months. It is right now February at the time of recording of 2021, and this helmet was available for the public in January in the United States. So I had only a few rides with this helmet yet. I did try to ride it on my naked bike, and so I gave it some rides on my naked bike, so I have really clean air on it to see how the helmet performs in city riding, highway riding, if I can feel any of the aerodynamic changes. Later more to that. And I also rode it on an adventure bike where there's more wind protection, but also the protection where you can get some wind buffeting. Again, later I will add more to that. By no means I've tested this helmet in every conditions yet. Right, I had it not on a racetrack, I didn't test it on ultra high speeds and that kind of stuff. I will make in a couple of years a long-term review to see how this bad boy is holding up as well. But for now, I really want to dive into the construction. What are the differences between the helmets? What changed from the design philosophy, safety, liners, acoustics, aerodynamics, all that kind of good stuff. So you can get a really in-depth overview of what happened with this brand new helmet and what should you do. If you still have an RF 1200, should you upgrade? Later in the video, you will see a conclusion where I will give recommendations for new buyers, existing owners, or somebody that's just interested in trying out a completely new helmet. All right, quick history lesson. If you're completely new to the brand SHOEI, as you can see, I had a few helmets. There's another one behind me, but we're not going to talk about the X14 today. SHOEI is a small company from Japan. Depending on different resources, I think they say they have between 400 and 800 employees, and the helmets that are here in front of me are handcrafted in Japan. They come with a nice little made in Japan sticker, so you know SHOEI stands for quality. Now you say, hey, anyone can say that, but if you look at my channel for this guy, I had it now for 7 years, and I actually made up here, I hope that's the right corner, there should be a link to a video where I did a 6-year long-term review of this helmet, and it held up remarkably well. That is a quick summary. If you want to know more, please check out the link and you get a full breakdown of how this helmet held up, the paint, the interior materials, etc., etc. Quick summary is, it is a quality helmet. Let's clear up the name confusion. SHOEI has, for different regions around the world, Europe, Asia, Americas, different names for these helmets. Ask SHOEI marketing why they do that. They probably thought it's going to sell better if they name it a certain way in different places. In the USA, this one is called the RF 1100, RF 1200 and RF 1400. Now you're like, wait a second, where's the 1300? The good folks from SHOEI are a little bit superstitious. 13 is an unlucky number in Japan. That's why it was skipped. So from 1200 we went to 1400, so you don't have a bad luck helmet. In Japan, this was the Z6, Z7 and Z8. So much easier, straightforward naming there. And now we get to the most complicated part in Europe. In Europe, and I have to look into my notes for this one was called the XR 1100. So same number, just one letter swapped and an X in there. Probably because X was a little bit hipper back then in Europe. But then for this one, they called it an NXR, right? The next generation XR, which is not a good naming because what do you do after the NXR, the NNXR, right? Funny enough, this helmet is not even available in Europe yet. I don't know exactly why. Again, SHOEI is a small company, so I guess some certification, maybe ECE homologation, something is still going on until this helmet will be officially launched in Europe. Like I said, SHOEI is a small company, so bear with them while they figure out regulations. Speaking of that, I am not affiliated to SHOEI. I just really happen to like their helmets. And all of these helmets are purchased with my hard-earned money, and I'm not sponsored in any way. Quick note on the age of the helmets. 2009 was the release date for this bad boy. Then we had to wait only 4 years to 2013 to get this one. And we had to wait a long 7 years for 2021 to have this guy, the SHOEI RF 1400. So we have almost 12 years of SHOEI helmet history here. And in the lineup of SHOEI, this is their best-selling street helmet. How Anthony from Mozilla nicknamed it the Goldilocks helmet. It does everything you want, all right. Let me correct that. It does everything you want really well. It's a quiet, very safe, very sporty helmet where you can rock it on a cruiser, on an adventure bike, on a sport bike, on track days, on a scooter, you name it. Price point wise, for the SHOEI RF 1400 in the United States, you will have to pay $4.99 for a solid collar or $5.99 for a collar like this one. This is the Prologue graphic. As you can see, throughout the history, I like red lines on my helmets, and that's why I went for these different graphics. They changed a little bit over time, but there you go. That's just my personal taste. All right, let's start with a quick comparison between these three helmets. I don't want to go too deep, and I really focus just on the direct comparison of the 1200 versus the 1400. But here we have the 1100. Interesting is we had 4 different exhaust ports right here, which you could open and close. And then also it had like this little locking, and I have a crack open system for the visor. The visor was still a little bit flimsy because it didn't have any ridges on top of the bottom, which was changed in this one. But overall, already a really good helmet. Very similar from the construction. You can see it has like a little bit of a spoiler here, which was the part of the hard shell. It has a vent here and then 2 vents here, which are creating these little horns lines, which is a really cool, a very distinct SHOEI RF line design characteristic. And then when SHOEI released the RF 1200, this was a really big step forward. It's lighter than the 1100. It has better venting. The visor was refined. It was more rigid. It was a little bit larger, so we had better visibility. We also added this little kink here. This was intended to probably save a little bit of the shell material and also to help the collarbone. So if the helmet gets pushed onto the side, that we have a little bit of a better chance of not breaking your collarbone. Then the central venting was added, and the top vents are different. You don't have the 4 anymore to open and close here. You have in this breakaway spoiler, right? In this one it was a fixed spoiler, now it's an added piece, so if it catches on something it will break off and not break your neck. There's a little slider here to open and close the vents. Other thing is also this slider here is very small, and then also there's like this slider here for the defogger and the ventilation right on your face. When this helmet came out, it blew the competition away. It's a very light helmet, it's very aerodynamic, and it's a very premium quality item as well. And that all for a fair price point, which makes it so attractive, and that's why it's one of the top sellers in the premium helmet segment. Now, before we dive into all the details of the SHOEI RF 1400, what are the main changes? We have a new visor. We will talk in very great detail about that one because I think visors are super important. You look through them, and riding is a very visual sport. So we will talk about that in detail. The venting scheme is the same. We still have the same amount of vents. Well, kind of. It is the same areas that you can operate, but there's actually some more holes to let in a little bit more air. So refined system there. On the back, we also have still a breakaway spoiler. Nothing to open and close here anymore because this was hard to know anyway if it's open or closed. So they simplified that. Also, you notice the center one and the down one there, they are now bigger, beefier sliders, so it's easier to find with the glove. They updated the protection a little bit. So all in all, this helmet is really more an evolution than a revolution like this guy. So really big step with the RF 1200 from this guy, and actually in my books a little bit of a smaller step. In Japanese it's called Kaizen, which is the process of refinement to always improve, and that's exactly what the goal was for SHOEI here. It very much makes sense to me. This is the best-selling helmet for SHOEI and really the flagship in a sense. It is not a helmet where you want to take big bets with and change everything, right? The risk to alienate your customers is too big. So what they did was, I think, very smart. They just refined this helmet to think about all the little imperfections and improve on them and drive them hopefully into the right direction to make this a more premium, better, safer, faster helmet. So stay with me in this review to see what did SHOEI improve and did they get there? Is this a much better helmet than this one? Let's have a look. All right, let's talk about the design changes and also the paint job real quick of this particular Prologue model in red, black and gray. First thing you can see is the visor. Now we have a completely flat visor. I think AGV inspired SHOEI a little bit to follow suit here. It looks cooler, it's a little bit more aggressive, and it's also supposed to help with reducing distortion. Then you still have these lines. They got a little bit deeper. I think like most of the lines got more accentuated, a little bit more edgy on this helmet. So from here you have a deeper ridge that would show up really nicely on a matte black helmet. Here the indentations are a little bit more sculpted. You still have this line that goes to the breakaway visor. It also got a little bit deeper. And really accentuated got this line where you really have like this kind of stripe going, and here it really goes back into the helmet. I think they just try to make the helmet a little bit more modern, a little fresh looking, a little bit more aggressive to really keep up with the competition, especially from AGV. And also to talk about competition, in this premium segment you're really talking about Arise, AGVs and SHOEI. I think these are the three players really in that segment, and you will see that they have a lot of similarities between the different models. Anyway, here you can see I already have a center unit installed. I will link in the description below and also up there in the corner if you want to see how to install the center on this RF 1400. Overall, the neck line here is still very similar. You have still the very RF significant line where you go up here. But there's a big change here. Instead of just having a neck roll here, there is now a padded hard piece, which was really hard connected. And later on when we go into the guts, we cannot replace this one. It still has some give, so I think it still helps a little bit to protect your collarbone. But one of the design reasons here to have this one is when helmets usually have a constant line here, the shell will keep just like the neck roll closer around your neck and have a better seal. So SHOEI reintroduced something here to just put some pressure onto the sides, so you have a better closure around the neck and jawline. Then the back, not really super exciting. Like I said, the control for the exhaust port changed. We will talk about safety later, but it's SNEL approved and DOT, of course, which is the minimum to have a legal helmet for the United States. And you'll see a little bit more about the design here. I looked at this helmet in really great detail. I did a review about an AGV adventure helmet, and that adventure helmet had a lot of problems with the paint job. This helmet and any other SHOEI helmet, I really look at every little square centimeter, and there's no imperfection in the paint. I don't know how they do it, if they just control very heavily or if they have the best painters in the business, but the paint job is perfect. There's no imperfections, there's no specks of dust in the clear coat, nothing. So in summary, a little bit more aggressive styling. The viewport is completely changed. We will talk more about that. We have bigger controls for easier control. And we have now center locking. We will also talk about that in a second. So have no fear. This is just quickly the design changes overview and also the graphic overview for these SHOEI RF 14 in the prologue graphic. There's also a lot of details. I don't know how much you can see it in this recording. For example, there's like little lines in this silver part, little details, and they're even here and they're faded out into the black. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Here's like little lines of silver. Very cool paint job. There's a lot of little details and the quality is just top notch. All right, that was the first little close up. Then also one thing that didn't really change, both these helmets came and still come in 4 different shell sizes. So for the most common different sizes, you get your own shell size. That helps you to not have any bulk and keeps the helmet in a smaller aerodynamic profile. They also, interestingly enough, have the same AIM Plus shell. A lot of people wanted to see a carbon fiber helmet to drop the weight a little bit, but SHOEI stuck with this AIM Plus shell. It is a shell that has its own little secret mixture. What the engineers from SHOEI said is that the other materials, including carbon, just doesn't have the properties they wanted from a helmet, and they consider impact resistance, slide resistance, flexibility, all these kind of things. So SHOEI is not working with carbon helmets yet. Let's see if that changes in the future, but shell sizes, shell construction, still the same. All right, weight. Let's talk about the big topic, the elephant in the room, so to say, first. It's almost a scandal in the helmet business that this SHOEI RF 1400 is a little bit heavier than the 1200. Now, before anyone freaks out, I wore this helmet and you cannot really feel the difference. It's only a small increase and it depends on the shell size, the helmet size itself. However, usually newer helmets are trying to push the boundaries and get a little bit lighter. Now, I cannot read the thoughts of SHOEI and why they did this, but here's my best assumption. The Kaizen approach to refine this helmet meant to add a little bit more aerodynamics, a little bit more creature comforts for noise reduction, better materials, and fine-tune the impact protection. Also, for example, the bigger sliders for the vents, they will all add tiny little bit of weight. So by fine-tuning everything and not changing drastically the construction, it makes sense that this helmet got a little bit heavier. For me, this is not a problem, but from a marketing standpoint, it sounds a little bit weird. So a tiny fraction heavier than this helmet, still overall a pretty light helmet. And especially when you wear it on your head and you ride, it feels fantastic and it doesn't feel 1 ounce heavier. What do you think? Do you like that SHOEI went against the trend to make everything lighter and focus on quality? Or is this a problem for you that they went up in weight? Comment below. All right, like I said earlier, I'm really excited about the new visor and it will be very controversial. On the SHOEI RF 1200, you have the mechanism here on the side And right, you have very simple movement of the different levels. But one thing that was always very interesting, and I will put a picture of Marc Marquez right here. Closing it is kind of hard. You see, like until the click, Marcus always uses both hands because he wants to make sure that that helmet is completely closed. Yes, you're right, Marc Marquez is not wearing this helmet in MotoGP, but the RF 1200 and the X14 have the same visor and the same base plate especially. So closing and opening, operating is exactly the same between the two helmets, and it is designed to be open from one side. It has no lock, so it could fly open, especially in heavy MotoGP accident. So not an ideal visor for racing because you're not quite sure if it's closed. That's why Marc Marquez has always this ritual before he starts a race. But SHOEI changed this. And now the controversy starts because you have now a center locking one here. So you can see this locks in and you can open it, and you can also do it with the other hand. Right, so you can operate it now from both sides. That's an advantage for racing, but also safety in general. You don't want the visor to pop open when you're in an incident. Locking is certainly more secure, and it is much easier on this helmet to know if it's open or locked. The downside of a central lock is it is harder to find with a glove. With your bare hands, you find the button very easily and open it. This one was certainly easier to find. So I've done it now a couple of times, and it depends a little bit on how thick your gloves are. But once you get into the habit, just like to press on it and directly move up with your finger, it opens pretty easily. That said, side mechanism is still easier to open, but we all have been there. We want to open the visor, but we have something in our left hand, and it's kind of awkward if you get around here to open it with your right hand. So it's a trade-off. It locks better. It is more secure, but it is a little bit harder to operate with a glove. Also, the operation is a little bit different. SHOEI redesigned the base plate, and we will see that once we remove the visor. These moves are much smoother than before. It has to do like with how the base plate is constructed and how the springs work. But it's really interesting. There's a last setting where you need a little bit more force actually. It's quite easy to do when you have the helmet on your head, but this last step to go up takes a little bit more force. Quite interesting. Advantage there is, of course, you know you have reached the very top because you feel it's a little bit harder to do that. But in a day-to-day, it doesn't make a huge difference. If you operate it like this, it's really nice and smooth. Right? You can close it almost, so you get a little bit of wind in. And you have also a city riding position. But I've noticed, like when I was riding this on my naked bike, it makes a very pleasant but definitely noticeable whistling sound how the air went through on that particular bike. I did the same setting on my adventure bike, didn't have the noise. So much about the noise of a helmet depends on what bike you ride, how windy it is on the day, do you wear earplugs or not, do you listen to music or not. So a lot of factors, so it's very hard to judge if a helmet is really quieter or louder. All right, like I said, the base plate is changed. That's why the operation is different. But also the overall area here is smaller. And so is this little guy. If we compare it with this, actually it is easier to get your finger in here and get this little ledge. Of course I have my fingers now in the way. But here, for my fingers, which are not very big, it's very, very easy to get in there. So for folks with small hands, not a problem. You guys there with really big fingers, this will be a little bit small for you. It's of course still possible, just a nitpick. It's a little bit small now to pull it. And the second thing is, this visor replacement was so easy, right? You just pull it down and then you can pull out the visor to the side. Super easy. And then you just press it in and you're done. This was so nice and easy. It was really changing the game of visors on how easy it is to switch a visor. I have many times ridden with this helmet and at night just popped in a clear visor. And especially when it's cold somewhere, you just keep the helmet on your head and you pop in a new visor. You don't even have to take the helmet off because it's that easy. You just pop it out, pop it in, you're done. Now this one is a little bit different. So In order to make the operation better and make the base plate a little bit smaller, probably in the effort to save some weight while they go up in weight in other components, you need now to get the latch, and instead of just being able to pull it out, which I first was trying to do, I was like, why does it not open? So I read the manual. You now need to press this down and pull the base plate forward. I cannot see it. It releases, which is harder. Here it's struggling and fighting me. So in order to now pop it out, it is quite a bit harder to get it out. So you still need to use this little lever, and I need to actually rotate it a little bit so I see it better, because you need to pull the base plate towards you and only then you can release it. Other side, pulling towards me, and then you can release the visor. Now this is not a big problem, you will get used to it, but it's a nitpick. SHOEI, if you're listening, the previous visor changing was much easier. I know you tuned this helmet now, right? So it's a little bit quieter. And the next point is there's now a better, tighter seal against the gasket, right? For less wind noise, less chance of water getting in. So they really improved this mechanism. However, it is harder to use. And so that is definitely my nitpick for this helmet. Changing visors is now a little bit more of a headache. It's still pretty smooth, it's still pretty good, but the RF 1200 was easier to operate and change the visor. Another change about the base plate mechanism is there's now a tiny switch here, and you can really hear it. Before there was like a screw where you can fine adjust the tension of the base plate. Now you can easily do that with one switch. It will set how strong the springs that are pressed together, and that will affect on how tight the seal is with the visor. So a little improvement there, overall much smaller, but a little bit harder to use. Don't worry, you will get used to it, but again, it was easier before. Anyway, don't want to beat a dead horse anymore. Let's talk about the visor. First thing, right, it's really cool that you have now the very flat optic. Should result also in a little bit less distorted view, which is nice. And you have now these vortex generators. They're very small bumps on the side of the visor. And they are really a carryover from the X14. The X14 had it already on the visor. You could always also use those visors on the RF 1200, but it only came in very selected colors. Right now there's only the clear visor available. Out of the box, SHOEI's come with a clear visor. You can see here, I will link a video of an unboxing to see everything that is in the box. And as SHOEI is a smaller company, they're still rolling out other visor tints right now. They already have 4 more coming. They should be available in spring, and I bet there will be more visor colors and changes coming throughout the years for this model. But again, it's a smaller company, so it takes a little bit longer for them. So the vortex generators are making little vortexes, like they make little they make little piggy tail air kringles. They create little vortexes around the side of the helmet, and if you think about it, this is exactly where your ears are. So yes, it will help you to glide a little bit easier through air, but also especially you will have less turbulent air around your ears, resulting in a little bit better sound insulation from wind, especially at high speeds. Interestingly enough, the visor feels now a little bit less rigid. The big change there is why we have still reinforcements on the top and the bottom, which makes the visor pretty strong this way. At the corner bits, these are now thin and don't have the ridges. Previously the ridge went all the way to the back, which made this also really strong. Now this plastic is a little bit thinner here, and it feels a little bit different. Probably again, tiny little weight saving, because the rigidity is really only needed in the centerpiece and not so much on the outsides. Another thing is, SHOEI didn't really increase the size of this visor, and in some other reviews I've seen that folks think you have a much better field of view with this visor, which is not true. The thing that is changed is the mounting post for the pin lock, right? A pin lock is a little insert that comes in the box from SHOEI that you can put inside, which helps you against fogging. So if you're somebody that rides in cold temperatures, in wet environments, the pin lock can really help you see clearer, because with essentially double pane glass, you have a less chance or fogging the visor up. What they really changed is they put these posts further into the peripheral vision, so you have now a better peripheral view when you have the pin lock in. Before it was more in the center, and that would cause this little corner potentially to fog up. So for all of you riders that are rocking the pin lock all the time, there's an improvement in peripheral vision on this visor. For normal vision, up, down, left, right, it is almost exactly the same size. I measured the RF 1200 and 1400 with my measuring band. They have almost identical measurements, and there's only a tiny little change. So this will have still a very good field of view, and you can see everything. But in bad weather riding with a pin lock lens, you will have now better peripheral view. Let's see if I can pop this guy back in. For popping it back in is you find first the hooks. I cannot see here. Once it's like hooked in, you just push the entire system towards you and then it pops in. So once you get used to it, it's pretty easy. Popping out, I think, is actually a little bit harder than popping it in. But again, it's probably just because I used the RF 1200 for 7 years. Very, very used to it. This is now something different. So I need to retrain my brain and my finger skills on how to get this visor in and out. Overall, just a little nitpick. Anyway, speaking of the pin lock Evo, which comes in the box, here's a little look into the future. SHOEI is giving away some information here. This new shield is called the CWR F2, and this pin lock also fits the CWR F2R, R like racing. So my prediction is that in 2021, we will still see new racing helmet from SHOEI that will share the same visor but has the R edition. So it will have the overall same size. I don't know yet what else they're going to change. There will be probably different colors, maybe also some other parts available. Definitely there will be the post for tear-offs, which you have on race helmets. So new SHOEI racing helmet is also coming, and it will be compatible with this system. So little secret information just leaked through that, and you heard it here first, maybe. If you did, give the video a like and subscribe. That would be very nice of you. In summary, the new center locking, it's hard to do when you don't have it on your head. It's nice and easier to lock. It's a little bit harder to open. With fingers, it's really easy. In a helmet, sometimes you search for it a little bit. If you get into this habit of like pressing and sliding your finger up, you will get the hang of it. It's just something different. Again, I used the previous helmet for so long, and I'm just used to it. Change is hard. Up here, the gasket got a little bit improved. You still have like openings here, so air can get out, so you can press it together and get good friction. And it's just very subtle changes. Now you have a bit of a lip here, which I don't like so much with the clear visor. I think right once you close it, you have still like this little inch or 2 centimeters of space up there where the visor doesn't finish flush with the shell. Once you have a tinted visor, you don't see that anymore, and I think it will look cooler. So just like a tiny little thing that I noticed that it looks a little bit strange. So final verdict, it's a better looking visor. It has now center locking. Yes, it's controversial. Some people will love it, some people will hate it. I already got adjusted to it. It was a bit of a learning curve, but I think for the safety alone, it's a good trade-off. All right, let's talk about the fit. Like I said earlier, this helmet doesn't have any support here, so the sides are a little bit squishy, which is great to get a little bit easier into the helmet. But once you're in the helmet, the neck part here around the jawline especially is not super tight fitting. It's still a good fit, but you would see in the other helmet it's a little bit different. If I put 2 fingers here, it's exactly the same position as in this helmet. You will see that in a second. But overall, it's really easy to get in there. Now, of course, the interior of this helmet is broken in already and really used to my old noggin for a long time. So it's already broken in and used to my good old noggin. So getting in and out is a little bit easier on this RF 1200 because of the neck roll. But let's compare it to the new helmet. Off with the old, on with the new. So getting in, it's a little bit tighter. The material feels a little bit softer, but of course it's brand new. So here, One thing is there's a tiny little bit less room in the chin. There must be something that has changed. It's really not a lot. It's maybe just a couple of millimeters, at least for my face. It's a little bit tighter. I still have space. Like one finger goes exactly between the chin bar and my chin, which is enough space for me. I can feel, however, a couple of changes. On the crown of the head, this still fits like a SHOEI. All SHOEIs out of the box fit me perfectly. This is a size L. And yes, for everyone, helmets fit differently. If you had SHOEIs before and they fit you, this helmet will fit you too. However, a couple of changes. Like I said, getting in and out is a little bit tighter. But now you have a nicer seal here around the jawline, which will keep out noise, especially around the ear. As I mentioned in an earlier section with the helmet, we have now the vortex generators, which will create little air vortices over the ear. And now we have a tighter neck roll. So they're really focused on isolating the area over the ear. I don't have a confirmation of that, but I also heard that the EPS foam was a little bit increased in thickness around the ear. So I think a lot of the engineering was done to isolate the ear area a little bit to make it a tiny little bit quieter. Then another thing that changed with the fit, like I said, neck, chin is a little bit tighter. And also the cheek pads are a little bit better conforming. I have a relatively narrow face and it's not too tight by any means, but in this I replaced the cheek pads because they were a little bit too wide for me from the factory. SHOEI is really nice. They sell a lot of the parts of the helmet individually, and for I think around $40 you can get different sized cheek pads, so really dial in the fit for your helmet. This will be also available for the SHOEI RF 1400, but out of the box this fits me better. It's a little bit more pressure, a little bit more of a race fit on this helmet. No, by no means it's uncomfortable, but especially when you're facing a lot of strong wind at high speeds, this helmet will move less and your face will not just like pressed around. So it has a really firm fit around my cheeks and the helmet is not going anywhere. So really awesome improvement for me there. If you have a different face with maybe puffier cheeks, you can always still dial it in. I bet SHOEI did a lot of experiments and comparison, and they found out that for their normal customers, this will be a slight improvement. So there you go. Else, the materials, as always, are very premium. They feel great around the skin. Even with like a shortcut beard, you don't destroy any of the material. This material is right on this helmet, 7 years old. It held up and stood the proof of time really, really well. But before we go too much into that, that will be in the next section. So overall, very similar fit, a little bit tighter on the chin, on the cheeks, and onto the neck. Still super comfortable, but like little improvements for better fit and less noise. One quick addition for the fit, sunglasses. This helmet is now a little bit easier to fit with sunglasses. I think like they opened the ridge here a little bit more, so you can slide in pretty big sunglasses like these. Very easy, and you have also no pressure, at least I have no pressure on my head. So right, if you want to do some light adventure riding, keep the visor open but protect your eyes, you can also run sunglasses, right? Or if you're just a fan of a clear visor, you can always use sunglasses for sunny moments to protect yourself. So a little bit easier to use them now. So again, a little detail where SHOEI improved the fit and finish there. Good. Next point, venting. It's one of the areas that SHOEI improved. Let me close this. So satisfying. The big changes are the vents are easier to operate now with the glove, right? They're all a bit bigger. And also here, right, you have that chin vent, which is now all a little bit bigger and beefier, easier to operate. And of course, the big advantage is now you always know that the vent is open. Previously, this one and the one in the behind were impossible to know if they are open or not. Now there's no opening or closing in the back anymore, which never made a big difference anyway. Maybe if you're in really, really Arctic temperatures, it would help you a little bit to keep the warm air in, but I never noticed a difference. So bigger operators now, and also there are now a few more holes to get in air, right? There's like some more here and here to increase the airflow a little bit. The previous helmet for me already vented very well. This one will be now a step better. When I was riding the helmet and had great ventilation, I didn't have any issues. Right now it's also not the middle of the summer, so I wouldn't say I have a final verdict on how much better the venting is. I guess if you would measure it in a lab, it will be 10% better. For me, the main takeaway is it's easier to operate, easier to know if it's open or closed, and it has a little bit better ventilation, but the ventilation was not a big problem before for me either at all. So quick note for the venting, and let's move in to the inside and take this helmet apart. For that, I will get out my trusty donuts and we'll get you guys a little bit closer so you have a better view on what's going on in the inside of this RF 1400. Let's go. Right, let's dig in. Because I have already the center communication system installed, let me do it from this side, and there's already a hair, proof that I'm wearing it. You still have the emergency cheek pack removal system, again, nothing new, but I still like the stickers. It's really cool that I make it look like a fighter jet, right? Like this, like don't step here things. So you can use them, right, to just pull here if you're cold out, and an EMT has to get the helmet off you. But we will just do it gently and get rid of this. So now, of course, you have a battery here, so ignore that. But let's pull this guy out. So here we can see this changed, and you still have that part here. I will show you that in a second. The material is really the same of the previous helmet. SHOEI calls it the the 3D Dry Max 2 system. Really cool name. Funny enough, RF 1200 and this guy, RF 1400, have both the same interior liner. It's the version 2. I have no complaints. It is really great material. It is soft enough to keep you comfortable. It wicks sweat and moisture away very quickly. It doesn't get stinky very easily. You can wash it very easily. So very, very similar. The only thing that they changed, right, is this cutout. And for that, they had to reinforce these little pieces. Right, and this red little triangle is visible from the outside. Now, with some red helmets, right, it's a little bit interesting because it's not the same color as the paint. It will be red on every helmet. If you don't like it, right, you could just change the color, I guess, with a Sharpie or so. But I think that I needed to reinforce this here so that it stays in shape. Then I have a cutout and the second piece here. So let me show you what I'm talking about. You see, this part is now part of the interior liner, and it is still squishy. It's like a soft touch material in a car. So I bet it will still help with impact protection, but it keeps the neck roll in a better spot, right? So it gets a tighter seal around your neck. So that changed. One thing that changed is this material. This is now a little bit harder and beefier. It has the same material as here. And if you watched my 6-year review of the RF 1200, because I grab it always here to hold the helmet and carry it, while I grab it here when I get the helmet off my face. This is now a little bit beefier. So I think SHOEI found out that this material was previously a bit too thin. You see it's actually stitched in here. So this is really reinforced, really cool little detail that it's now stronger. Yeah, so little upgrade here. Then for the ear pockets, there are still spots. There's already a speaker in here, and it has this nice little soft cover, which is still exactly the same as previously. And let's take out the headliner. It has 2 snaps back here, just like previously. And then you snap it off in the front. Yeah. Should have rehearsed this off camera. And now you will see an old friend. This is exactly the same construction as on the RF 1200. It has these holes here. The size of the cutouts are a little bit different. I think they optimized it a little bit for the airflow, right? The channels, you will see that in a second, are a little bit bigger, but it's the same construction as in the RF 1200. Nothing wrong with that. It's a great liner and very comfortable. I've seen some reviews where they got things mixed up. This is not the liner from the X14, and you can see these buttons are not adjustable, so you cannot rotate the helmet around your skull. But Let me flip it inside out. Right, it's a very comfortable liner, very good quality. I didn't change my liner of the previous helmets. I had it for 7 years and not a single issue. Very comfortable. Goodbye for now. And then it will be hard to see because it's black EPS foam. The EPS foam also same as before. It's a dual layer multi-density impact foam. It would have been nice to see some improvements here. SHOEI supposedly has done some slight refinements for the areas where they had more impacts. Little fun fact, the liners are out of styropor, EPS foam, right? That is styropor essentially, but they're painted black. One of the important things about black is if you have any crack, you would see a white crack and you know the helmet is broken. So if you look in your helmets and it's not painted black, you definitely have a forgery and it's not an original helmet. All right, now I just put it all back together. Let's talk about safety. Right, the main purpose of a helmet is to keep your brain and your head safe. What has SHOEI done in this helmet? So this one is now certified for the brand new SNELL 2020D specification, which sounds great. But in fair comparison, when you check the SNELL homepage, also the RF 1200 and even the RF 1100, only in the size XXXL for whatever reason, maybe because they don't have models of that anymore because they're not being made anymore, are also certified for the latest 2020 standard. Every couple of years, SNELL and other standards like ECE get a little bit stricter, but it also shows one of the problems with that. Right? With these helmets, you know that they pass the tests, but as you can see that even an RF 1100, which is like 12 years, 13 years old, it still passes the latest tests. So SHOEI really builds very, very safe helmets that stand the test of time, but it doesn't say everything about the helmet. I'm very, very certain that SHOEI did small improvements in how they lay out the EPS foam for better protection. Unfortunately, we don't know by how much this helmet exceeds the SNELL certification, but it is passing one of the top certifications. We're very interesting to see what happens in Europe right now, why the helmet is not available yet, and if they're going to certify it for ECE as well. Usually they only certified it for SNELL and DOT. However, now with the new FIM regulations, maybe they will certify this helmet as well, which would be a cool thing. We will see. All right, how is it to ride this helmet? And especially, is it quieter than the previous generation? Like I said in the beginning of the video, I only rode this helmet now for roughly 2 months. I definitely didn't see all conditions of it. I think it is a little bit quieter. I usually listen to music and I have also earplugs in. So the previous helmet was already quiet. I feel like with the vortex generators and maybe it's a tighter neck roll or maybe the combination of the two, or maybe the new EPS liner, how it has changed in density, etc. The end result is I'm feeling very comfortable at even high speeds in this helmet. The noise level is pretty low. And if you really want to get something measured, I bet the guys from Champion Helmets, they have a great YouTube channel where they do a lot of lab-like tests. They will definitely measure the sound dampening in the real world of this helmet. So look out for that review once it becomes available in Europe. Because I think they're located in the UK. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, great YouTube channel. Check them out. Champion Helmets, they will measure that, where they do a very empirical, data-driven comparison. I do it very differently, but I really just talk about the experience and how things change. All right, you made it to the end of the review of this RF 1400 in the Prologue graphic. Like I promised in the beginning, I would make a recommendation of what should you do if you have already an RF 1200. The Kaizen approach, right, like the improvement, steady improvement is really noticeable. The helmet is an RF, right? It has so many design similarities. They really just made it a little bit more modern. The lines are a little bit stronger. The visor is flat. You have a little bit quieter right now. The vents are a little bit better. Protection and comfort are very, very similar. So it is really just one step over the RF 1200. If you don't hate something like the center locking mechanism or that the Visor is now a tiny little bit harder to change. This is a better helmet. If you already have an RF 1200 and you're happy with it and it's not older than 5 years, right, quick reminder, after 5 years, which is also how long the warranty for these SHOEI helmets is, which is awesome. After that, the manufacturer recommends that you should get a new helmet because the EPS foam might not do the full impact protection anymore. It's up to everyone's rider, and I'm not going to tell you what to do, but it's just a recommendation. So my recommendation there would be, is your RF 1200 older than 5 years? Then definitely upgrade to an RF 1400. It is better in pretty much everything. It's a little bit more aerodynamic. It is a little bit quieter. It has a little bit better venting, and the style is a little bit more modern. So upgrade. If you're still happy with your RF 1200 and your RF 1200 is not super old, I would maybe wait a little bit longer. Maybe wait for a graphic of this helmet where you cannot resist, or see what's coming out from SHOEI. Like I said, I think there will be predecessor of the X14 probably still in this year. At least there's the Visor that will be race ready as well. For any one of you that never had a SHOEI or never had an RF 1200 before, especially when you have maybe an RF 1100, this is a great helmet. It's a modern helmet. It is wind tunnel tested. It has really great safety, premium quality. The paint job is flawless. At least I didn't find any flaw in my sample. It has speaker pockets for a communication system. And I think it's overall a very handsome looking helmet. SHOEI really focus on improving all the little nitty-gritty details of the almost perfect RF 1200. And in my books made a little bit better helmet. Now the 1200 and the 1400 are very close to each other, but this one is a little bit better. So I love this helmet. I had the previous RF 1200 for 7 years, and now there's a new king in town, there's a new sheriff in town. And from now on, I will rock for my daily city and highway riding this RF 1400. I hope I didn't skip over any details you wanted to know. I tried to go into everything that I've noticed so far about the helmet. Like I said, there will be still a review when I have that helmet for a lot longer to see how it holds up over time. But from my experience with previous SHOEI helmets, the quality seems to be the same, and I have no doubts that this helmet will also hold up over time very well. Granted, if you treat it well and you don't throw it into the water or leave it outside or throw it on the ground, etc., etc. Well, this is it. I hope this was useful to you. If you learned something new about this helmet, give it a like and subscribe. That would help my channel really out. Like I said, it's a great helmet. I hope you will enjoy it too. Let me know what experience you have with it. Is there anything that I missed about this helmet? Any details that you know about? Please share in the comments below so we can all benefit from that. So this is the RF 1400. Awesome helmet. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.